We all grew up with fairy tales. Cinderella losing her slipper, a mermaid trading her voice for legs, a little girl in a red hood meeting a wolf. These stories feel universal, like they've always just existed. But what if I told you that many of these tales are deeply rooted in specific places, carrying the history, culture, and even the anxieties of the countries they came from? Let's take a journey, a fairy tale world tour, if you will. First stop, Germany. When you think of German fairy tales, you probably think of the Brothers Grimm, right? Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm weren't just storytellers, they were linguists and cultural researchers. In the early 1800s, they traveled across German-speaking lands, collecting folk tales that had been passed down for generations. And these weren't the sanitized versions we know today. Their original Hansel and Gretel, for example, was published during a time of widespread famine. The story of two children being abandoned in the woods by their parents because there wasn't enough food to go around. It wasn't just a fantasy. It was a terrifying reflection of a real-life struggle for survival in the dark, dense forests of Germany. The Witch in the Gingerbread House? She represented both the temptation of having food and the stranger danger lurking in desperate times. Okay, let's leave the dark German forest and head north to the chilly, beautiful coast of Denmark. Here we find Hans Christian Andersen. Unlike the Grimms, Andersen wasn't just a collector. He was an author, creating his own literary fairy tales. And his stories are often deeply personal, filled with a sense of melancholy and a longing for belonging. Think about The Little Mermaid. On the surface, it's a love story, but it's also a powerful allegory for being an outsider. The mermaid feels like she doesn't fit in, either in the sea or on the land. She gives up her voice, her very identity, to try and fit into a world that ultimately doesn't accept her. Many scholars believe this story was a reflection of Andersen's own feelings of social isolation and unrequited love. It's a tale born from the cold Danish shores, full of longing and heartache. Now let's fly over to France, to the lavish and opulent court of King Louis XIV. This is where we find Charles Perrault. Perrault was writing for the French aristocracy, and his stories reflect that. They are elegant, witty, and often carry a very clear moral lesson aimed at the young ladies and gentlemen of the court. His version of Cinderella, or the Little Glass Slipper, is a perfect example. It's not just about a poor girl getting a prince. It's about the importance of grace, patience, and virtue. The glass slipper itself is a symbol of delicacy and aristocratic refinement. This isn't a story from the muddy village, it's a story for the polished ballroom. It's a French fantasy, wrapped in silk and glamour, teaching a lesson on how to behave in high society. But what about stories that have versions all over the world? Let's take Cinderella again. While Perrault gave us the glass slipper, one of the oldest known versions comes from 9th century China. It's the story of Yexian. She doesn't have a fairy godmother, she has a magical fish. And her slipper isn't glass, it's woven from gold threads. She loses it, the king finds it, and he searches for the woman with impossibly tiny feet. A reflection of the Chinese cultural value placed on small feet at the time. So the same basic story, a mistreated girl, a magical helper, a lost item, and a royal search, was told in completely different ways, shaped by the culture it was in. From the survivalist tales of Germany's Black Forest, to the melancholic longings of the Danish coast, the courtly lessons of France, and the ancient traditions of China, fairy tales are more than just bedtime stories. They are cultural maps. They are windows into the hopes, fears, and values of the people who first told them. The next time you hear Once Upon a Time, maybe ask yourself, upon a time where? The answer might just be the most magical part of the story.